Hello, and welcome to a different Testing Peers podcast. My name's Chris Armstrong, and today I am joined by one wonderful guest, Heather Reed.
Hello.
There we go. So today we're going to have a little bit of a review of some exciting old published work. But before we jump into that, we are delighted at Testing Peers to be sponsored by Saffron QA. Saffron QA are a specialist in testing recruitment, offering permanent, contract, and newly developed retained recruitment services. More details can be found in the show notes, or please reach out to Ben Letitia directly to find out more. Now, Heather, in a traditional Testing Peers 4, we have a bit of banter, as we call it. So I thought if we're going to be looking back at old things, why don't we look and think about maybe something that you see, like photographs or something from our youth. Have you ever got any sort of things that you've got that are maybe slightly embarrassing that maybe it took a while for you to introduce to James?
Well, there's definitely one school photograph where that year myself and my friends decided we were going to try to do highlights ourselves. I don't know, not many people might know that my natural hair color is quite dark brown. If you don't leave bleach on your hair for long enough, it does not in fact turn blonde, but it stays this lovely shade of orange. So quite a few of us in our school photographs have these lovely orange stripes running through our hair.
That sheds some light onto a couple of people in my school when I was at high school age had orange in their hair as well. I did always wonder. That's really
Mhm.
interesting. I think possibly the most embarrassing thing that was done. I mean, we were very lucky to not be high school age when the likes of Facebook and other things were
Oh gosh, yeah.
public. However, I continued to be embarrassing through university, and there is still on YouTube, but very hard to find, evidence of myself and my housemates singing along acoustically to High School Musical that was cut very jaggedly by my then housemate with the movie and us singing along as well.
Is it so hard to find because it's being demonetized?
I do, if he got any money from it, that would be absolutely tremendous. But it is quite appalling and quite embarrassing. But my wife has seen it. Mm. But speaking of things that we'll maybe like people to actually look at, you published back on the 16th of January 2017 an article on Ministry of Testing called 30 Things Every New Software Tester Should Learn. No, it's an amazing article. I've passed it on to a lot of folks when they've been sort of looking at these things. We haven't really got time into talking right now about your motivations
Mhm.
and all those sorts of things, but we know a lot of people have looked at it. We know a lot of people have seen it. But how much have you looked back at it? And are there things in this that maybe you would tweak or change?
Yeah, I mean, I get asked a lot when people share this on social media and they tag me in. There's always at least one person who's like, oh, but what about? Or you should have done this. And I think I look back at it and for me, for the most part, the tasks I would still keep very much in their essence, but I would probably adjust the references that I added or things like that. There's only one task in particular that I would probably change just because my own experience in the industry has led me to see that there would be value in making the task more broad and less specific.
Cool. Well, there's 30 tasks. We've probably got about 30 minutes. Let's see if we can whistle stop through these tasks and just chat to you. So, task one, are you interested in software testing?
I keep it, absolutely keep it, because there's so many people who are like, oh, well, I'll just do software testing as a stepping stone into development, and they don't really care. And in my opinion, that can be where testing practices are born. If you're not actually interested in the practice itself.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When I joined the industry, no one was joining a tester to be a tester to be a tester. They were coming along to use it as a stepping stone in the computer game industry to do another role.
Yes,
But yeah, absolutely. Task two, what is software testing?
I mean, yeah, I would keep that as well because I've met so many people along the way in my career who either can't explain software testing. I always remember one of my statistician lecturers who said to me about stats, if you can't explain it to me like you would explain it to your grandmother, you're not good at explaining it. And that's just a sentence I keep in my head all the time. So especially with software testing, there's executives and all that. Like there's hierarchies in our organizations who don't know what software testing is. And you have to be able to explain it in non-technical language, like that your granny would understand. So I feel it's really important for people to be able to explain what it is in their own words. It doesn't have to be what I think software testing is or what you think software testing is. Just for them to be able to explain to them what it means.
Do you think you'd ever think about expanding it to differentiating or including the likes of QA or quality engineering into the sort of fold as well?
Ooh, we only have 30 minutes, Chris. That's a podcast all by itself.
You might just say, well, yeah, I think, I don't know if you've ever looked on a job site before, Heather, but
Yeah.
trying to find a job role as a software tester isn't as easy as searching the word software tester.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that if you're joining the industry, that's probably something to sort of learn, that it's the same, it's different?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, like I come from a science background. So when I look up keywords for QA, because of like what's on my CV, I start getting offered these jobs around like actually assessing the quality of like medicines that are going out to people. And that is something that you can get as well when you look up QA, even in technology.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a really great list that someone put together. It might be on the Ministry of Testing discussion forum, the club, around like the different job titles there are for testers, which could be a great
Yeah.
thing to link in there. Like, what is software testing, but what are all the different things that software testers can be
Oh, yeah.
called?
The show notes for this are going to be wild. Let's move on to task 3, testing for non-testers.
Again, it kind of links to the previous two tasks, I guess, of like, are you interested in it? And what is it? And in a way, maybe it could be wrapped into the previous task of like understanding what software testing is. But at the time, I felt like it needed its own standalone task because Katrina Clokey's resources around testing for non-testers, they were just so fantastic that I felt like they deserved their own place on there. They had helped me so much in my career up to that point.
She's got some fantastic stuff that she's published.
Amazing stuff.
What a fantastic, amazing thing to be able just to get access to. Task 4, get social. And now this is before you were community manager as well at MOT.
Yes. And it was obviously before all of the things with Twitter. So, and it was before meetup.com had some interesting updates to keep it PC.
Yeah.
And it was before the pandemic and before online conferences were quite so common. So yeah, I think I would keep the get social. If this is one of those ones, I would keep it in essence. But in terms of like where you get social, that might change based on your own personal viewpoints on the platforms that the ability to get social is hosted on.
Especially these days, I suppose, where things like Mastodon have got each server has its own code of conduct. It's a bit harder
Yeah.
for things to be moderated. You've seen the pain of moderation.
Yeah, it's I do not envy the people moderating those servers like at all.
But yes, getting social, absolutely. I think your career will get a fantastic boon for being social, interacting. You'll learn so much and meet some amazing people.
Yeah, and I think like it can be adapted based on you can decide which way of getting social works best for you and how much you do or don't like to interact with people or in what formats you like to interact with them.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty inclusive from that standpoint. The testing social bubbles of the very many of them that there are.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, task 5, get organized.
Yeah, it's one of those ones I'll just briefly mention that there is a lot out there. There's so much information out there that you're going to need to organize or plan around how you best learn and how you best consume this vast quantity of things that are thrown at you. So, yeah, for me, it was using the methods that I recommend here in the article, but for the reader, it might be something completely different.
There are things that I've come across that I think are useful that I would probably throw into that. There's Micah Brinkoff a few years ago
Mm,
shared a course from Coursera, which is learning how to learn
yes,
and about sort of finding out the right way that you learn things. And I think that's really important also as testers from the other standpoint when we're presenting information and reporting stuff to understand that people will consume that stuff differently.
yeah,
So that's really good. And then there's a book that's called Making Work Visible, and those things are really useful when we talk about being organized and stuff. You can't have everything in our heads. We don't want to be gatekeepers.
yeah,
So yeah, no, I think that's super valuable. Task 6, check out the Ministry of Testing platform.
yes, 100%. I still stand by that. Like when you look at when this article was written to today, how much content has been added to that platform from like 99-minute workshops to talks to interactive exercises. Like, yeah, I mean, this task, this description of this task on here just doesn't cover the vast quantity of stuff that's there. So yes, I would very much keep that in there.
And the side note is Go Pro with MOT.
Of course, it just unlocks so much more content for you. And we'll touch on this later. If you can't afford to go pro, they do have a scholarship program that you can apply to, which is especially useful for people who are new to software testing or trying to change careers and might not have the funds available to do so.
Absolutely. Task 7, what is a bug?
Oh my God, I had this conversation in work like literally about 3 weeks ago with someone where we discussed what we would consider a bug,
Mm,
like each of us, and what is a bug versus what is a bug in Jira, as in like, is it a
yeah.
task, epic, or a bug? So yes, I still think there is huge importance in similar to being able to explain what software testing is, being able to explain in your own words what a bug means to you,
Mm,
to have those conversations with people because you will end up in the situation that I was in about 3 weeks ago where it's like, well, I think it's just a task that we need to action. It's a bug. The system's not working the way I want it to work.
there's gamification as well, and there's
Yes.
some places have issues and defects and incidents as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think it's good to know your truth.
Yes.
Task 8, recommended reading. This is probably vast.
This is just like, I mean, barely scratching the surface here with the list of recommended readings. So I guess I'll like blast through a couple of suggestions in addition to this, which like even the suggestions I'm going to give here aren't even scratching the surface. So Rob Meany and Ash Winter have, since this article was published, written a book about testability. It's fantastic. Everyone should check it out. Goiko Azik has written 50 quick ideas to improve your tests. That's just one example. He's got some amazing books. Definitely check them out. Mark Winteringham recently published a book about API testing. The title of the book escapes me, but look up 2-Bit Tester on Twitter or Mark Winteringham.
I'm gonna just quickly see if I can find it.
Nicola Lindgren has two really excellent books. One is Starting Your Software Testing Career, so obviously hugely applicable to the
Brilliant.
readers of this. And how can I test this? So it's like
Mm,
in situations where you're given something, and it's like, well, how would I even go about testing that? Which again, even if you're not new to software testing, valuable to take that step back and think about how you would test something. Maret, is it contemporary exploratory testing? That book is.
I believe so, yeah.
I mean, Maret is just such a fountain of knowledge
It's the
on
gift that keeps on
exploratory
giving as
testing.
well.
Yes,
She's awesome.
obviously loads of blog posts to read that she has written if you're not sure if you want to take the leap to buy the book. But So much information there. And Lena Weiberg, Would You Risk It? I actually have the Would You Risk It cards on the
Me
shelf here
too.
behind me. Amazing, amazing resource. So that's just in addition to
Yeah.
the list I have there, but we touch on it later on in the article. I'm sure if you get social, if you ask online for book
Mm.
recommendations for software testing, you're gonna get hundreds. There's really excellent books out there.
If there's one thing you learn from the community is you ask for opinions and recommendations, you'll get them.
Yes.
Sometimes without asking.
Yes.
Task number 9, write a user story.
Yeah, I think this is one of those ones where I would probably change to not quite to writing a user story, but understanding how we translate the requirements from our stakeholders. Can you see all the business speak I'm adding in here? How we would translate the requirements from our stakeholders into software that goes out the door. Not everyone uses user stories in the format that they're kind of originally pegged here in the article. So yeah, I think I would definitely adapt that a bit more to thinking about like what you want to accomplish with your team with the feature and all of the ways that you can possibly get there, which involves things like user story mapping, 3 amigas, refinement, more refinement, looking at designs, getting user feedback, looking at your user analytics, all that sort of stuff. So yes, task 9 would definitely be one that if I was to go back to it, I would look to adapt somewhat for sure.
Interesting on the task that you put on about making a user story for making toast. I think about Vernon had an example around making toast around continuous testing and stuff, didn't he?
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. Toast is good. I like any sort of food analogies when it comes to these things.
Yes. It's an interesting one on that one as well. It's like, how toasted do you want your toast?
Oh, it's equality. It's in there. Different users like those things. My wife sees it goes too dark. She calls it burnt when it definitely isn't burnt. But to her, it is. Task number 10, testing personas.
Yes, again, hugely important to start thinking about the different types of users using your system. Like, for example, we've had a couple of ones recently where, we're all the engineering squad were quite technically minded people, but the end users of our software aren't always. And something that seems super simple to us, for example, reset your password, to them is just like, what the hell is this? Why do I have to do this? Sure, I use the same password for everything. So yeah, I think it's important to think about your end users and how you can test your software with them in mind.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Task 11, test a user story.
Yeah, this is another one I think I'd change because it's not necessarily bad, but based on my experience of testing, like this is written quite a bit like, well, testing happens at the end. But testing and the testing mindset can and does happen long before we ever get to code being written. It happens in, as I mentioned previously, thinking about how we're going to deliver this vision that our stakeholders have of this software. So it's thinking about the risks of the approaches that you're taking there. It's possibly pairing with developers as they're exploring themselves how the code that they've approached for the solution. It's possibly pairing with your designers or your UX people if you have them, and thinking about like the different risks with the different proposed flows for it. So yeah, I think testing a user story sound like the title itself sounds a bit like bottlenecky, gatekeepery. It happens at the end when in some instances, in some organizations it does, but we're trying to move testing forward by testing throughout the life cycle.
Well, speaking of moving it forward, the concept of heuristics in task 12 was certainly new to me until a few years ago.
It's one of those tasks where I look at it and I'm kind of like, I could have done with better diversity of thought and experience in there, for sure. Again, is there anything like wrong if we're going black and white with things of with this, and not necessarily, but it could absolutely be better. Software Testing Heuristics, Mind the Gap, written by Richard Bradshaw and Sarah Deary, like that just has, not only is it itself an amazing resource, but it has an excellent list of resources from people to touching on that diversity of thought and experience that I mentioned, which I would definitely add into this section here for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about them for hours, but
yes.
Well, we've got a lot more to go through. Task 13, oracles.
I'm going to skim over this purely because, similar to the previous one, could do with a little bit more diversity of thought in there. But
thank goodness for Katrina Clokey.
Thank goodness for Katrina Clokey. Yeah, she's some excellent stuff in there.
Okay, task 14, white and black box testing.
Oh my God, yeah. I'd remove it. It was one of those terminologies that the time was used, but like I'm in the industry, I don't know, years now, and I've never heard anyone since use this terminology. So it's like it's not necessarily useful, I don't think, to people.
No, fair enough.
But I would add an addendum to that. The black box puzzles from James Lindsay are absolutely phenomenal. Yeah.
Not just the black box puzzles. I mean, the stuff that he puts on his website, Workroom Production, it's wild. He's got some really good stuff. What a fantastic resource and a gift that James is also.
Yeah.
Task 15, accessibility, something that I think we probably would agree is more relevant today than it was.
Yes. And I think because of the focus that's been put on accessibility testing over the past number of years, there's so much more resources out there to help with that. So from that perspective here, I would definitely add some of those. For example, there's more resources, on the Ministry of Testing website in particular that spring to mind from people who have accessibility issues themselves. So I'm thinking like Crystal Preston Watson has an excellent talk from Test Batch San Francisco about Accessibility 101. Deborah Reed has a whole course about like getting started with accessibility, which are really good foundations. Like I keep going back to Crystal's video myself with the accessibility work that I'm doing in my own organization to help explain it, to help justify it. There's just phenomenal stuff out there now.
There's Ailey Stokes has the accessibility audit as well, doesn't he?
Yes, yeah, amazing, and a 99-minute workshop around accessibility too, which just definitely there's so many more resources that could be added in there.
Number 16, something that's clearly not relevant given that you're right now on one. Podcasts.
Yes, for me now, with where I'm at in life and career, podcasts are nearly more important than ever. But I appreciate that some people prefer blogs, they prefer or vlogs even now. Oh my gosh, they weren't a thing when this was written. Oh my gosh. But yes, when I'm trying to like get dinner ready, clean the house, get kids sorted, I'm listening to podcasts in the background. So it's a really easy way for me to like stay in touch with the industry, just with where I'm at in life right now myself, selfishly.
Yeah, and there's some of the most inspiring people that I've got to listen to have come from those places, like, you know, the likes of Dan Ashby and Alan Page and those folks. You know, there's a gift that comes from these people, you know, spending some time with you every week or whatever to sort of share some of their wisdom and thoughts and stuff. It's really wonderful. Task 17, UX as a tester.
To this day, maybe it's just because of my focus, user experience as a tester is hugely important. Thinking about how users interact with your software and why they interact with it the way they do helps frame not only how you think about risks, but then how you approach your testing strategies and efforts.
You'd throw things like risk storming in there and real sort of UX kind of environmental audits and stuff. Yeah, really important things. Task 18, something that we all love, regression testing.
I think just based on my own experience in the industry now, I would potentially wrap this into automation to an extent. I think it's important for people to understand how bugs can reoccur and the importance of checking that new code that's been committed hasn't broken existing functionality. But I think that it should also come with the questioning of should that be automated?
Yeah, I think that's very, very wise. Task 19, agile testing. And this is one you've said that you've had a few comments from people about.
I've actually, if I had €1 for every time someone told me I was wrong for putting this in here, I would be a very wealthy woman. I think the people who point out that I was wrong about it, their viewpoint is that everybody in the industry is doing continuous integration and deployment, and nobody uses waterfall or agile anymore. Where are you going, Heather? But the reality is that's a very privileged position to take. And I know non-zero, non-double digit amounts of companies out there who are still working in waterfall. I'm not working in one of those companies, but I think it might be worth adapting it to explore the differences between the approaches to delivering software rather than waterfall, agile, or DevOps, exploring how people get their software out the door and why one approach might work better than another.
Number 20, pairing.
Yeah, 100%. I do it at least every day in my organization. So yes, I feel like there's just massive importance there.
Pairing is my love language. It's the best way to learn, I swear, and work with
Yeah.
people. I'm all on board with collaboration. And speaking of collaboration, mob testing?
Yeah, I think this is another one of those where now the industry has moved on a bit and mob as a word sounds a bit angry. I think I would change this one out to instead explore the concepts of like bug bashes or ensemble exploratory testing and getting like your whole team together, or even like customer support, sales, marketing, all those people who have a buy-in to the product to explore it and see if the new feature that you're working on delivers what they wanted, what they expected from the product.
Task 22, dark patterns.
Yes, it's something that I don't see spoken about explicitly so much anymore, but we talked about it ourselves before this podcast, which is like if you think about just like the cookies, accepting or declining cookies on website, there's so many dark patterns even built into those. It's like, do you accept to not consent to consent to have us collect data about you? And it's like, what am I saying yes to? And like that's a dark pattern. And I think it's really important for testers to understand that as well from a perspective of being able to have really constructive conversations with your product and UX team about, are we building dark patterns in to our users? Is this the best user experience that we can deliver? So maybe it could be tied into UX somewhat, but I feel like dark patterns themselves deserve, again, a standalone.
Yeah. I like it. Task 23, conferences.
Yes, 100%. I mean, as we mentioned kind of at the start of the podcast, there's even more options now with things moving online or having a dual approach where you can attend virtually or in person to the same event. There's so many more scholarships out there now. There's like diversity tickets. There's you can volunteer. There's so many ways that you can attend conferences, and they're just an excellent learning opportunity.
And of course, you can apply to speak, which you will be doing next year.
Yes,
awesome.
Definitely.
Task 24, exploratory testing.
Again, here, I think like there could be much more diversity of thought added in here. There's been so many excellent resources shared since this was written about exploratory testing. I'm thinking like Callum Akehurst Ryan as an example of one of them that just springs to mind. But like there's some excellent stuff written by, Elizabeth Zagroba. I'm thinking of Anne-Marie Charrett as well. Obviously Moret, but like there's so many people who've shared resources here that could go on. Like exploratory testing itself has so many articles on the Ministry of Testing website.
Well, in the interest of time, I'm going to group tasks 25, 26, and 28, performance
Yes,
security and mobile testing.
because they're specialisms.
Yeah,
But I think could probably both agree that it's important to understand the importance of them.
absolutely. I think, yeah, understanding why they exist, why they're important,
Mhm.
the why is more important than the how often.
Yes, exactly. And understanding, as I'm looking at this like for security, understanding why when someone's login attempt fails, you can't say, oh, that email address doesn't exist. And equally with performance, if you're in a meeting with someone and they say, oh yeah, well that query, I mean, it only takes 5 minutes to run. And you're sitting there going, but like, would a user sit there for 5 minutes waiting for the results of that? Unlikely.
It's very true. Task 27 is automation, which I don't think anyone really does in testing.
Oh gosh, no, not at all. Angie Jones has excellent resources here. Richard Bradshaw, Alan Richardson. Yeah, I mean, I think the automation channel on the Ministry of Test and Slack is probably the busiest channel after random, which will just show you like how many questions there are out there about this. Andy Knight as well has some great blog posts about automation.
So it's useful that you said the word question because task 29 is ask a question.
I think this still deserves to be its own standalone piece because as a tester, so much of our job is about asking questions, both of the people that we work with and the system as well that's under test. And now more so than ever in my career, I can see the importance and the value of having the confidence to ask questions. Like earlier in my career, I would never have dreamt of like asking a question directly to our head of SRE or our CEO or anything like that. Whereas now, because of the knowledge that I've built up over the years and the confidence that I've built up in not only my abilities, but the confidence in that knowledge, I'm not afraid to ask people questions. And I'm not afraid to look a little bit silly doing it because if you never ask, you'll never learn. You'll just wonder like, what if I'd asked the question? If you ask and it is a silly question, and people are like, oh, ha ha ha, it's this, of course it's this. You'll have gotten an answer, and it'll probably stick out in your mind nearly more because it's like, oh my gosh, it was that all along. Oh, I'm mortified. But you'll remember, you'll have learned.
It pertains to so much though, because we're trying to uncover information about our product and learn about our product to better understand the value of our product to our users and to learn more about them. But it goes so much deeper, doesn't it? Because also you can ask about opportunities at work, ask about promotions, ask about financial compensation. Same with when you're speaking at events and stuff, asking for compensation for those things. Like the art of asking a question and the bravery in the courage in doing so, you know, it's like they say in sport, you don't score a goal if you don't shoot.
Yeah.
Or if all you've got is, well, I didn't score a goal, but then I wouldn't have scored a goal if I hadn't shot anyway. It's stuff you learn from asking questions, and we thrive on learning.
And even like to the point where you were talking there about your career, like I wrote a blog post about the questions I asked in the interviews that I did to get the role that I'm in now. And people were a bit like, oh my gosh, you did not ask that in an interview. And I was like, well, of course I did, because it helped me to know that this was a company that I wanted to work for. Like, I think like one of the questions I asked everyone that interviewed me, what is the biggest mistake that you think that this company has made in its lifetime? And I think that can unveil a lot about both the people and the organization, because if they go, oh yes, I mean, that time that we did our funding round, we should have approached bigger investors. Not for me personally. It could be for other people, but not for me. Whereas like I got all sorts of answers like, yeah, we didn't hire testers until way too late in the process. The person who is now my team lead, his answer was so brutally honest. It was like, asked, or no, sorry, it was what does a bad day look like for you? And he said a bad day for him looked like someone giving in their notice unexpectedly, because he felt like as a manager that he should have seen the signs. He should have known that they were unhappy in their role.
Yeah.
And he said, not that I would have stopped them, but to know why they were unhappy
Yeah.
and what I could do better rather than finding out after they've submitted their notice. So yeah, like the art of asking questions is not only valuable in testing, but in your career and finding
Absolutely.
the right fit for a role for you as well.
I think I've on interviews I've asked, what are the biggest problems you're facing right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I've even been declined for roles for reasons that weren't those solving problem ones, but for things they already had a solution to. I was like, this is... So you're already doing the thing that you want to hire for, but you don't want to do the thing that you've got a problem. Okay, well, at least I know.
I think it's called the ostrich effect, isn't it? Like burying your head in the sand.
They're interesting conversations. Task number 30 of 30. Share your experience.
So for context of where I'm going to go with this, I used to do what was called the software testing clinic in Belfast, which was where we helped people who were new to software testing understand. It was basically a really well structured lesson plan to help people learn about software testing. And that was obviously after writing this article. And we as a team who presented these sessions had a mantra at the start of them. And it was that sharing and asking questions helps us to learn. So you sharing what you've learned, so many people think, well, like, who's going to learn from me making this mistake or from me writing down the questions that I asked in interview? But you learned. So you learned from what other people had shared. You learned from people's blog posts, their podcasts, their talks, just from talking to them over coffee. And the power of you sharing what you've learned is so often underestimated that I think it could have its whole own article, but that's what I really do think and still believe to this day that task 30 should still be that. It should still be share your experience.
There's so many layers, isn't there? Because on the sharing your experience and the thing I was thinking about when we've reviewed abstracts for conferences and stuff, if I see that there's a story, if I see that people are not just giving me a theory, but they're giving me like, this is something that I did, these are lessons that I learned, mistakes that I made, that suddenly becomes something that makes it's a story that's accessible to me because someone's telling me something that is their truth, their experiences, rather than just like ideas. Ideas are fine, but on a conference talk, I want to hear a story being told, and that sort of experience is unique to one person. What is your truth and your lived experience is true, and that's great because that helps us not feed into that echo chamber and just these people that present sort of everything is perfect and this is how everything should be.
Yes, yeah, and like that, like it's everyone's journey into testing is so different. Like how you got here and how I got here. Like our stories are so completely different.
It's wild. It's crazy, but it's also the thing about sharing is true of feedback, right? Feedback for you've published content and you appreciate when people look at it, they read that, they feedback to you. Hopefully they're respectful. I really hope they're respectful. But it's good to know how people perceive what you're doing. And that's valuable to us. That's a valuable lesson to us as testers, because the value is in feedback loops and in communicating things, and sharing is so much of an important part about what we do every day, that we should be able to tell our testing story, both in our workplace and with others, to help other people. It's all sort of community, both internally and externally.
Yeah, I think to that point as well, like I suppose some people are put off because in their minds, sharing is I'm getting up on the stage and I'm giving a conference talk. It doesn't have to be that. It can be, a conversation with someone down at the coffee shop. It can be you write it down in a notebook. It could be a tweet, a message on Slack. It could be anything. Just sharing it, even like the amount of times where I've learned from myself writing out what I've learned. It's like, oh my gosh, that point there. Sure, that's that. How did I miss that? So it can help others learn, but it can also help you learn from your own learnings by sharing them and writing them out.
Yeah, it's very true. It's quite nice to have a snapshot of those things and discover that perhaps you wrote something that was also wise once upon a time.
Yes.
God,
I
that sounds
mean,
quite smart.
I look back at some of my old blog posts and I'm going, "Ooh, get you! You wrote some sick code."
Oh yeah, it's fun. But then there's those other ones that you cringe and go, "What was I thinking?"
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. A bit like the photographs at the start of this
Yeah,
whole conversation.
yeah. I guess that's probably quite a good place for us to sort of stop. Hopefully, listening to this, we're not thinking this was a mistake. Certainly, you should be very proud of this article, and the value that it's given to so many people that I know,
Yeah.
and I am but one person. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing some of your ideas. Do you want to tell people where they can find you if they want to follow you on your blog or your socials?
Yes, was the best place to find me is heatherreidduff.com. So it's HeatherReiduff.com. And that has everything, my LinkedIn, my GitHub, my Twitter. I'm not on Mastodon, I'm afraid. So yeah, that's probably the best place to find me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And this has been a Testing Peers podcast. We have got presence on testingpeers.com. We're on Patreon if you want to support us at patreon.com/testingpeers. We're on Twitter still. We're apparently on Facebook and Instagram. Not a lot happening there. We're on LinkedIn. We aren't on Mastodon, but I think some of us are. But that's an interesting experiment in time. And you can find us on all your favorite podcasting places and spaces. And if you want to give us any feedback, reach out there, please, or contact us at testingpeers.com. Thanks you once again to Heather for being on today and for Suffering QA sponsorship. Thank you very much.
For now, it's goodbye from the Testing Peers.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.